Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. It is a log house. The reason I don't like when they say log cabin, they all expect you have dirt floors. We have floors and all that, and the windows stay shut and all that. So it's great. It's great to be with you. It's good to be with my former colleague and now a fellow patriot for our cause in Virginia, Delegate Steve Martin, and other members of the Virginia delegation, Robert Nelms, Delegate Peter Way, Delegate-elect Frank Ruff, Delegate-elect Dave Albo, and others who are here. And those folks will be leading the charge in the General Assembly as we go forward with our ideas. It's great to be with you all, the American Legislative Exchange Council. Having been a former member of the American Legislative Exchange Council, I know how important a role this organization plays in helping states be what Thomas Jefferson envisioned, and that is democracy's grand laboratories for testing new ideas and initiatives and creative policies. Many of the Virginia ALEC leaders, and some of you are here in the room, not only Steve Martin, but many of ALEC members and staff folks are helping in our transition team, looking at how we can actually implement these ideas, not just talk about them, not just postulate about them, but actually act and put them into practice in Virginia so that we can be a model for the rest of the nation. And just so some of y'all who may not know me, I am a Jeffersonian conservative. I'm a Republican, but if you want to know what I believe, I'm a Jeffersonian conservative. And as Mr. Jefferson said, the role of the government is certainly to prevent people from harming one another, but otherwise leave them free with their own hard work and their own ingenuity to improve themselves to the best of their ability, and that the government should not take from the mouths of labor the bread they have earned. Those are the principles I ran on in our campaign. It's the principles of 1800, the revolution of 1800, so to speak, when Mr. Jefferson took over the presidency. But it's also the principles that I think apply in the 1990s and the years beyond. That's what the government was formed to be, not to be a meddling nanny or an oppressive enemy, but rather to allow people to achieve to the best of their ability, to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed regardless of their race or their religion or their ethnic origin or their gender, an equal opportunity to succeed. And the government should give the individuals, the citizens, the tools to achieve, which are a positive tax policy, good education, to allow someone to achieve to the best of their ability. Now that's contrary to the other philosophy, which is guaranteed equal results. There's a fundamental difference between equal opportunity and equal results. And that's the fundamental difference that we find so often, regardless of where the races are or the campaigns are across the country. Now, many of us in Virginia over the last decade have looked to other states with a great deal of envy because we've seen creative new Jeffersonian policies implemented in such places as South Carolina by Governor Carroll Camel, in Wisconsin by Governor Thompson, in Michigan by another ALEC member who I got to know, John Engler in Michigan, and if you can even believe it, in such places as Massachusetts under Governor Weld. Now, well, I'm here to say that Virginia, with the help of these gentlemen here and many others in Virginia, are going to look to be leaders once again in Virginia. We want other states to again look at Virginia for leadership and reform. And some of the ideas and issues that we're right now poised and ready and prepared to implement in Virginia, many of them originated with ideas and research and background that came from the American Legislative Exchange Council. And many of the folks are right now, as I said earlier, helping us put it into place. My friends, our ideas are not just Republican or Democrat ideas. Clearly, more Republicans agree with it than Democrats. But let's make sure that we espouse these views all over. I didn't concede a single vote in our election. I didn't care where it was, who it was, how they voted in the past. The Hispanic Chamber of Commerce agreed with our philosophy and endorsed me. There were a group called African Americans for Allen. 80% of them were former Democrats, but they agreed with our principles. Asian Americans cared about our ideas on education as far as job opportunities. And so our ideas are not one that has to be looked upon as whether Republican or Democrat or broken up by race or gender or region. There are ideas that I think the vast majority of people, if we reach out to people, will agree with, and that's the way that we'll get these policies implemented. We have to reach out and get more people involved, get that broad public support, which is out there, for the ideas that are espoused by the folks who are leading in ALEC. Now, while many issues contributed to my election victory, there's probably no other more important than the plague of violent crime and Virginians' desire to have a governor who will put public safety at the top of the state government's priorities. Now, in Virginia, this was in today's Richmond Times-Dispatch. You don't get it up here. Now, you have the Washington Times at least. But at any rate, this is the editorial page from the paper. I'm going to see if you can't get it on that camera very well. At any rate, first thing says, this is Surgeon General Jocelyn Elder's brain. She's holding an egg. Next slide is, this is Surgeon General Jocelyn Elder's brain on legalizing drugs with an egg frying in the pan, and then it says, any questions? Well, these are not the sort of, you'll see it eventually nationally. Now, General Barr has given us the sermon on crime, and certainly, believe it or not, General Barr was instrumental in our efforts in our campaign. The important lesson from our campaign, for those of you who are running in campaigns across the country, is you want to keep this in mind, is what our race, our campaign offered. The question was to the people of Virginia, do you want a governor who advocates a 5-day waiting period and gun control as a centerpiece of his or her anti-crime policy, or do you want a governor who make your communities and neighborhoods safer by abolishing a lenient parole system and keeping violent repeat offenders off the streets? Now, the message and the answer from Virginia is loud and clear, is that the people of Virginia, sure, they may have polls and they say, sure, we'd like this and we'd like that. But the people are smart. They realize that the crime is being committed by repeat offenders with a very lenient parole system that we unfortunately have in Virginia. And when given a choice, it was loud and clear across Virginia, they wanted to crack down on the criminals. They were not going to fall for gimmicks. And that's why the most important issue in our campaign, and one of the most important things that we're going to be focusing on, is abolishing our lenient parole system in Virginia, restructuring sentences. William Barr is going to give us the guidance and leadership, along with Richard Cullen, who is a former Eastern District of Virginia U.S. Attorney, and that's going to be the key thing that we have to push for. Don't talk about it in the campaign, but also execute. We're also going to show how it can be done in a cost-effective and innovative way for ours to go forward with abolishing this leniency, but also have these violent criminals serving time, because that's what the Virginians that I know want. But it's not enough. Not enough to put them behind bars. I want them to work when they're behind bars. Why not have them work and help defray the cost of their incarceration? Furthermore, we have to look very seriously. Many of y'all's states have done it. Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida, and others, Texas, have privatized some of your correctional policies. Not in Virginia. They haven't done it yet. They've gone along with that elitist establishment view that the government knows best, and we all know the government rarely knows best. So we can look at ways to privatize that section. Another key, as Delegate Martin said in our election, was those of us and many people in this room and across the country want to have a strong economic empowerment program. We're empowerment conservatives, and that is that the people have had enough of the government spending their money wildly, and the only solution they always come up with is raising more taxes. We have to cut government waste, and it's got to be, though, more than rhetoric. ALEC had great programs, pamphlets, I remember, on how having higher taxes hurts one state or the other, how every time Massachusetts raised taxes, the folks in New Hampshire would get more prosperity, where they jack up tax. Well, is there somebody from the Live Free or Die state out there? Great license plate. But at any rate, the point is the way to create economic prosperity is not by having higher taxes. And what we need to do, though, is streamline our government, privatize services, and look at ways to run the government more efficiently. The first action that I'll implement as soon as we get through the swearing-in ceremony is empowering a blue ribbon strike force of people from the outside to examine Virginia's government, to look at where we can end duplication. They'll secondly be charged with looking at regulations that are stifling, especially small businesses. The first place to look, and I challenge you in your states to look, wherever you have a regulation that exceeds the federal minimums, there ought to be a unique justification to your state why you have to exceed the federal regulations, which are sufficiently burdensome in themselves. And unfortunately, in Virginia, we have regulations that right now exceed the federal minimums. That puts us in a competitive disadvantage with the Carolinas or Tennessee. And we understand, in our administration, the folks here and ALEC understands we're in a war of competition, and we're going to make this state a better state in which to do business. And we also will look in this blue ribbon strike force to privatize governmental functions. It's not going to sit on a desk or a shelf collecting dust like the Grace Commission did. Whatever we can implement by executive order, we will. Whatever needs legislative approval, we'll get the legislature to do it, and we'll have that support from the public to do that. My cabinet, every member of my cabinet, whether it's Kay Cole James in Health and Human Resources, or whether it's somebody in Natural Resources or Economic Development or Education, all are going to be known as a competitiveness cabinet. Every single thing that they do has to be viewed by a guide as to whether or not what they're doing is going to make us more competitive with other states, make it a better state in which to invest, take a risk, and create jobs. And we always will have open doors and open ears to the citizens, small businesses, corporations, and the people of Virginia to make their government better. The other thing that has to be done is not just tax laws, it's the regulations, the bureaucrats. You got to slap the hands of the bureaucrats, especially the regulations. And one way to do that is put a discipline on the government. You know, we have environmental impact statements for everything, where you have to worry about woodpeckers and louseworts and all manner of flora and fauna. And over in the Northeast, you worry about owls and so forth. And that's fine. But you know what? We also ought to care about people and their property and their jobs. And we're going to require economic impact statements to be done. So my friends, we have a mission. We have a full agenda. We want to make sure that we are having a comprehensive workfare program in Virginia. In other words, work rather than idle behavior for able-bodied people in Virginia. We want to revitalize our inner cities with empowerment ideas. We do want to address the declining academic standards in our public school systems, not with attitudes and not with a bunch of gimmicks, but with accountability and academics and empowering communities and parents to get involved, making sure our higher education system is affordable to everyone, not just to the wealthy elite. And Sam, we appreciate he's got $2 at UVA, and he knows tuition's gone up by 50% in the last 4 years, sadly enough. But it's also important that you all know that we're going to have a positive business climate in Virginia. Virginia's going to be open for business again. And next time you all have a meeting, a national meeting around the nation's capital, get on the other side of the Potomac where we share your values a whole lot more than they do here. Nothing against the folks. The food was good here, and I drank water before I left my log house this morning. We have whale water. At any rate, we also, my friends, realize we have important things to do, and we have a common mission. And I understand Sam kind of mentioned this earlier in the morning. We have a common mission in protecting our state's rights from a meddlesome and mandated infringing federal government. I ask those of you here today to join me in a message to the Congress and to President Clinton to promise that if he ignores us, we'll mount an all-out effort to protect the people of our states from the pests on the Potomac. My message to the President is this: remember those days. Remember those days when you resided in the governor's office, Grant our waiver requests. Free us from being federal hostages. Allow our Commonwealth and the various commonwealths and states of the Union to be a laboratory for democracy, and we'll get along just fine. When the president's... We'll get... As far as I'm concerned, when the president's initiatives are beneficial, such as opening up new foreign markets with fair free trade agreements, such as the North American Free Trade Agreement, I'll support them. But if Virginians' rights are threatened or our prerogatives are being usurped by the federal government, I'm going to stand up for Virginians. We're going to oppose these ideas that they want to take over our education with an establishment out of the 5,000 people in the Federal Department of Education trying to put in these numbing ideas where you try to give folks, students, self-esteem. They need to earn self-esteem. We want to have rigorous academic standards, not outcome-based education dictated either by the federal or state government. And if they have counterproductive tax policies, we'll fight them. And if they're going to come up with a health care program at the federal level that takes away patient choice, takes away the ideas of a marketplace of ideas and competition, and somehow doesn't think individual responsibility is important, I'm going to stand up to them and fight them because it's not good for Virginia. And for those of us that are a right-to-work state, if he's going to keep pushing for these strike replacement bills that abrogate our right-to-work law, I'll stand up to him against that as well. And those of you that are not in a right-to-work state, stay that way. It gives us a competitive advantage in Virginia. We the people in Virginia have made it clear that we're going to take a stand. We're not just running just for the heck of running. We're to take a stand on issues. It's important that the state legislators, those of you who are members of ALEC, stand with the governors, stand together, stand firm for the principles of federalism upon which this country was founded. These are exciting times. They're times for great opportunity, not only for Virginia, but for all of the United States of America. And I look forward to working with ALEC in the years to come to embolden the people, to empower the people, and make this a great country that it was intended to be for and by the people. Thank you all so very much.